Hi friends. I wanted to take a minute to show you one of my favorite toe tap drills, and it actually doesn't require you to stand on your hands at all. It's a reclined toe tap using the wall. A toe tap is when you tap your toes to your wrists, generally from a handstand position, because that would be kind of hard in forearm stand or headstand. And it's considered kind of the bottom 2 inches of a press, which generally for most people is some of the hardest parts to get through when you're learning pressing. And that's for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of opening required along the back chain. So whether you feel restriction in something like your hamstrings or even your calves or your low back, that could, hamper your ability to get into a toe tap. There's a ton of compression of the hip joint that you need to be able to work with. Again, there's overhead flexion of the shoulder, which always creates some problems along with pushing and heavy protraction of the shoulder blades. So practicing it in a safe place like the floor and the wall is a great place to begin. And as we move through this drill, please know that the point is not to get your toes to the wrists. The point is to focus on compression and focus on the position of the upper and the mid back as well as the pelvis. So if the toes never touch the wrist, doesn't matter. If the legs stay bent, certainly doesn't matter. That's going to depend more on your hamstrings than anything else, so we're not worried about that. What we want to focus on is the breath, position of the ribs and the pelvis that plays into position of the spine, what the hands are doing on the wall. And you may be thinking, well, I'm not really working on press to handstand, so what's a toe tap good for? This is still a wonderful drill that helps you work those hip flexors. It helps you work the deep core. And those things are going to be helpful throughout your yoga practice as well. You're also going to get a bit of pushing, a little use of the exhale, typically also helpful things in your yoga practice as well as movement practice in general. So you do need a wall or something really solid, not just a chair or a couch or something like that. You don't need a mat if you don't mind laying on the floor. And you want to lay down close enough to the wall where you can firmly push your hands into the wall and feel a solid connection. If the arms stay a little bit bent, that's fine. In fact, we don't really want to lock them out. We want to think about mostly being straight, but a small bend in the elbows as we hug the elbows towards the midline, especially if you have really hypermobile elbows like I do. Now notice my whole palm is connecting to the wall. Whole palm, all four corners and the fingertips. The fingers are actually going to squeeze like they're trying to make a fist. That's going to help turn on some of the flexor muscles of the forearms to help protect the wrist. But they're not going to be able to make a fist because the wall's in the way, right? So I'm pushing all four corners of my hands into the wall, squeezing my fingertips so that my fingers actually start to bend and my fingernails turn white. But I'm not just pushing directly into the wall. I'm also thinking about dragging the heels of my hands up the wall. And as you try that, you'll notice that, you can feel some muscles and things turn on as we push our arms overhead in this flexion position. But as we think about dragging the heels of the hands up the wall, other things start to turn on as well. So we're just looking for a little bit more stability all through the shoulder girdle because it's a very complex set of joints. So pushing the hands into the wall, clawing the fingertips into the wall, and then thinking about the heels of the hands, also slicing up towards the ceiling. I'm going to start to press my upper and mid back down into the floor. And even as I do so, notice what happens to my pelvis. So my pelvis starts to shift into more of a posterior. So we have this natural lordotic curve of the low back, and we want to limit that slightly as we press the low back down to the floor, bringing the core into gear to help us do that. Now, some people, depending on your hamstrings, are just going to be able to swing your feet up and hit your wrist. But again, that's not the point. You don't need ridiculous boots either to help you do this. What we want to think about is going slowly and minimizing this space here. So the space in the hip crease, as if you were holding a pencil between your hip crease and your thigh, and you didn't want anyone to be able to take it out. So if you have to straighten your legs all the way, and you notice that your thigh comes away from your hip crease, well, you're going to lose your pencil, and that's not the point. It's better to keep bent legs or slightly bent legs and hold onto your pencil here to focus on this compression. So hands in. Pull the knees in like you're going to come into happy baby, but instead of together, slightly out towards the armpits. And then aim for that compression here. Using the pressure of the hands into the wall and dragging up and the fingertips clawing, pull your knees even closer towards your armpit and notice how your pelvis comes off the floor slightly. that's fine. You might shiver and shake in your belly like I'm doing, especially if you have a slippery mat underneath you. Don't worry about that. You can even roll up a little bit higher, bringing the knees all the way up towards the armpits. My whole pelvis is off the floor, and that's perfectly fine. Here I can think about starting to straighten my legs as long as I don't lose the connection between my thighs and my low belly. If you find you're still really far away, back off a little bit and use an exhale here to push into the wall, pull the navel into the spine, and hopefully create a little bit more space to pull your thighs in closer to your low belly. If the legs start to reach a little bit towards the wrist, great. But again, don't worry about it too much. You can use some audible exhales here. We like to use these little sharp audible exhales like through the teeth to help pull the compression in, getting your toes a little bit closer. If your toes easily come to your wrist, then it's time to think about keeping the compression, keeping the toes on the arms, and sliding them down towards the elbows as you think about dripping more of your back body onto the floor. So right now, just my upper back and mid back is on the floor as I slide my toes down, pushing into the wall firmly. Even though there's a bend in my legs, I really feel this. In my hamstrings, I feel it in my core. Once I'm at a place of pretty much maximum depth, I'm going to take a few of those little audible exhales to see if I can get any closer, bringing the toes towards the elbows. This also showcases for me that even though my hamstrings feel tight when I'm going into something like a press, I really do have plenty of space here to do this toe tap if I'm in the proper positioning for my specific body. So again, if you're here, that's a great place to be. If you're here, that's a great place to be. Think about pulling the thighs in, working the legs towards straight, pushing into the wall, and dragging the hands up. If you feel like you're scooting away from the wall at any point in time, back up a bit so that you have, again, that firm pressure of your hands into the wall. Always good to have a solid foundation before you worry too much about anything else. And then it's knees towards the armpit. Keep that. Let the tailbone roll off the floor. Let the whole low back roll off the floor. Aim the toes towards the wrist, even if they don't touch, keeping the compression, not dropping the pencil in the hip crease. And then using some exhales, whether they're short or long, to push into the wall firmly and think about sliding the toes closer towards your elbows. Once you're there, hold for a few breaths. You really are searching for sensation here in the hip crease, in the low belly as it tries to stabilize and tries to help you pull yourself in opposite directions, and maybe even some sensations or heating up in the shoulder as you push the hands into the wall and drag up towards the ceiling crease. This is a great drill for obviously pressing to handstand, which is that floating of the feet off the floor or slow lowers. But again, it's going to help in general with your inversion practice with things like plank pose, stability in downward facing dog, and any kind of hip flexor drill, any kind of compression drill or use of this lifting of the leg, which is very popular in yoga. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, I have a variety of ebooks, including one all about handstand pressing and just handstand in general. You can find those links in my profile bio. I also have a lot of online videos currently on authenticmovements.com, where I partner with Erin Kelly, Bianca Scalise, and sometimes our newest strength and conditioning coach, Anthony DeFiglio. We'll have many more videos coming up there soon that we can't wait to share with you guys. But anyway, drop some more things that you'd like below, and thank